Congratulations, you finally reached big boy status and have signed up for your first powerlifting meet. You've paid the $150 meet registration fee, you've been breaking in your $300 SBD belt, and now you want downside protection. You want to make sure that we're not adding another meet day didn't go as planned post to the Instagram database. Take it. Now, as we spoke about in the last video, which if you have not watched yet, I highly suggest checking out after this video, a lot of the preparation that takes place before competition is what contributes to a good or bad meet day. But I would argue that for newer lifters, especially first-time competitors, the day of lack of preparation can totally sabotage your performance. Because let's face it, peaking as a new lifter, when you're not as fatigue sensitive and the rate of strength gain is rapid, it's not that hard. A lot of times what happens is just poor decision making on the day or lack of preparation. So we're not going to be giving you the tips today of have fun at your first meet, but I'm actually going to give you guys some actionable, practical takeaways so that you show up to your first meet prepared, comfortable, and confident to hit PRs. Let's get into it. So getting right into it, we cannot talk about preparation without talking about the cold hard numbers, attempt selection. Now, I don't care if this is your first meet or your 20th meet. You should have a planned, written attempt selection on your person so that you're not freestyling on the day. Now, the way that I would recommend setting this up for every lifter, don't care who you are, is you should have a reach third attempt, a plan A third attempt, and a plan B third attempt. Now, what this is going to denote is a reach is the best possible outcome for the day. This is the I have never felt this good in my entire life. I could load whatever I want on the bar and I know I'm gonna hit it. And this could result from a peak going really well or simply that meet day environment really getting you going. The plan A would be what your expected outcome would be, right? And this is something that's in line with what your training predicted. Maybe you took an all-out grind a week out and you know that that's about what you're good for, or you took an RP9 single that looked like it had 7.5 kilos left in the tank. That ultimately gives you the predictive power to plan for that plan A. And the reach might end up being something that's just a little bit above that. Now, your plan B would be the third attempt where maybe you had a weight cut to make, or maybe you got stage fright, or the equipment felt foreign because you've never lifted on kilo plates. This is a contingency plan that you want to make sure you have so that you don't end up going 2 for 3, not because you weren't strong enough for your plan B, but because your second attempt just ended up being too heavy. Which brings me to the second attempt point, is that you should also have a reach, a plan A, and a plan B for your second attempt. And you guessed it, each of these attempts would line you up for the respective third attempts. Now, working backward from that second attempt, you would have your opener. Now, Sean, what opener should I actually load? There's this old school guide I remember when I was coming up that said you should take whatever you could load for a triple. Now, for some people that might be a valid guide, but for others, it actually might be too heavy. So the general guideline is usually somewhere around 90% of your 1 rep max. And then what you would do from there is take 2 evenly spaced jumps up to your third attempt, right? So it might look like 2 10-kilo jumps. And then in the event that you don't feel as good and have to take your plan B, it might be a 10 and a 7. And in the event that you feel amazing, it might be a 12 and a 10, right? You always are adaptable, but you have a plan to give you those guidelines. Now, if you are a stronger lifter, you look at guys like Ashton Rusko, who just squatted 400 kilos. Percentage-wise, he's not opening that heavy. A lot of us, when we get to a certain strength level, can't replicate strength that well in close proximity to our top end. So the guidelines that I would probably abide by as you get stronger are squat openers could be anywhere from 87 to 90%. A deadlift opener might be as low as 86% up to 89%. And then a bench opener might be in that 89 to 91% range. But ultimately, I think it's important that you are picking numbers that are in line with what you've done in training, because your best gauge for how strong you are on the day is loading something that you have familiarity with from training. We all have the experience of knowing, hey, when I take 225 in the gym, I know how I'm going to move based on that set. I know what kind of day I'm going to have. So give yourself the opportunity to do that. But the written guide doesn't stop there. We also want to have all of our warm-ups mapped out. We want the exact number of warm-ups we're taking. We want what they are, the number of reps that we're doing with them. We want that on the written attempt sheet as well. Because one of the biggest mistakes, and I would argue probably one of the biggest things that can sabotage a lifter on meet day, is that I see at nationals when I'm coaching, maybe it's a lifter who's warming up on our platform and it's their first time competing at nationals. Or maybe I'm at a local meet handling a lifter and it's this other lifter's first meet ever. And we're trying to make this warm-up room rack move efficiently and give everyone ample time to warm up so that they feel good for their opener. And I'll ask, hey, what's your warm-up? And they say, I'll just take this. Or I ask at the start of warm-ups, hey, how many warm-ups are you taking so we can establish an order and make sure that you get warmed up on time? And they go, I don't know, maybe 5. Do not be this lifter. And this is to your own detriment. This is not us as handlers trying to be mean to anybody. We are trying to set you up for success on the day. So have all of your warm-ups written out, and what you'll do is you will tell the person running the rack, I have 5 warm-ups. They'll establish an order based on your strength levels, and then when your next warm-up is up, they will know what to load. This will ensure that you warm up comfortably, that you know exactly what you're taking, and when it comes to planning when you're taking the warm-ups, what you can do is map out next to your warm-ups on the sheet. I want to take this last warm-up 10 minutes out. I want to take the second to last warm-up 15 minutes out. I want to take the third to last warm-up 20 minutes out. This all can go according to your preferences. Some of us take 30 minutes to warm up to a top single. Some of us take 10 minutes. This obviously also depends on your strength level. Now, if you have a handler, you can give them this sheet. You sit back, you kick back, you let them load all your plates, you wrap your wrists when you're told it's time to go. But even if you don't have a handler, secret hack for you, if your meet is hosted on Lifting Cast and you go to the flight and you click on your name, it will tell you how many lifters out you are. Now, typically, the number of lifters out you are corresponds with the number of minutes out you are. In other words, if I'm 10 lifters out, that probably means I'm about 10 minutes out. So you can actually just be checking the Lifting Cast or have a handler checking your Lifting Cast and tell you exactly when you take your 140 kilo warm-up, your 160 kilo warm-up. So there's no guessing, there's no being pressed for time and having to rush a warm-up and then sit for 20 minutes before you take the next one. You can be precise, you can be in line with what you do in training, which ultimately limits the amount of external variables that can encroach on your best meet day performance. Now, this next preparation tip I'm going to give you is from one of the best. Matt Gary is arguably the pioneer of modern game day coaching. And while this is a subtle one, it can be a total game changer. Because if any of you have been into sports psychology or have listened to elite athletes talk about their success, one of the common threads is visualization. So what Matt Gary recommends is simply walking out onto the platform and gaining familiarity with the visual field before the meet begins. There are so many sensory inputs that you will get from this experience that will drastically increase your comfort when you're actually going out for your attempts. So all you have to do is focus on lifting. You're gonna get a feel for the carpet. Is this soft? Does it feel like my normal platform? How much space do I have front to back to approach the platform? Because if I'm just gonna storm out there and I don't have a lot of room, is it gonna feel like I'm crammed or crowded? Where is the ref sitting, right? Who am I gonna actually be looking at to get my commands? Where's the crowd? Is the crowd going to be distracting? And should I just focus on something all the way in the back of the room? How intense are these lights? Am I going to be blinded, right? Have a familiarity with the platform, and that's just one less thing you're gonna have to worry about when you're trying to produce maximal force and stay in your zone. So this next preparation tip is probably going to seem like a bit of a hot take, because inevitably, if we're talking about preparation, we have to talk about food and hydration. And the common tip that you're gonna hear if you're watching videos similar to this is just eat what you're comfortable with. Don't introduce any new foods. No. You likely have 2 hours to weigh in before you compete. Now, if you have 24 hours, the quality of food that you're eating matters a little bit less. But if you're doing a 2-hour weigh-in competition, we don't want the foods we would eat normally. We want easily digestible foods that will lead to the best possible performance on the day. Now, Sean, what do these consist of? Well, you would want liquid carbs, easily digestible carbs, minimal dietary fat, minimal dietary fiber. If the meet runs a little long, yeah, you can have a protein source, but ultimately we want to be fueled post weigh-in. We don't necessarily need to be full. So examples of foods that would serve a great purpose here are just plain white bread, rice, pasta, fruits that are tolerable for you. Clementines I really like, oranges are great, bananas, dates. These are foods that don't have a big footprint, they're easy to digest, they're very calorie dense, and will keep you feeling energized without feeling like they're sitting in your gut. So don't be the person that's bringing the McDonald's Egg McMuffin to a competition or the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that are gonna slow your digestion because of the fat. We want to refuel efficiently, we want to feel light, and while we may want to feel a little bit full for squat, maybe if we've made a cut and we want our belt to fit just right, we could take care of that, but ultimately we want to make sure we're eating for efficiency and not just for comfort or peace of mind, because what tastes good might not fuel us well. Now this inevitably brings me to the topic of hydration, which is to say, bring more water and electrolytes than you think you need. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen lifters at meets where maybe they finish squatting and coach says, hey, go get something to drink, go rehydrate. And the lifter says, I'm out, I don't have anything. Don't be this lifter. Because I'm sure you've heard at this point, but new lifters, unless the cut is very, very small and requires minimal effort to make the weight class below you, you should not be cutting for your first meet. However, time and time again, I have seen lifters who have not made a cut either cramping on the platform or simply feeling out of energy by the time they get to deadlifts. We do not want to see this happen to you. So how do we prepare against this? Well, the first thing is simply have enough volume of liquids. Now this could be upwards of 2 gallons of total fluid, especially if you're competing somewhere that's very hot, or maybe you're doing a competition with multiple flights that'll last upwards of 4 hours. But we don't want just water. We want to have sufficient sodium, potassium, maybe even magnesium as well. The general recommendation for hydration would be 1 gram of sodium per liter of liquid. So this is the concentration you should be aiming for the majority of your competition. Now that's not to say you can't just sip on regular water, but if we're just downing a gallon of water with no electrolytes, we're gonna get to bench press and have that inevitable low back or hip flexor cramp. So make sure that we're taking in enough sodium throughout the day. Now this brings me to the final point about diet and hydration for the day, which is to say, if we are going to feel bloated from food and water, we would prefer that to be the case on a squat and a bench press. But by the time we get to deadlift, we should just be steadily sipping. The food that we should be eating should be light. Maybe it's some candy, maybe a piece of fruit, because for deadlift, we don't want to feel like the Michelin Man. We want to feel loose, we want to feel lanky, but we still want to feel energized. And of course, what better way to energize than caffeine? Now, most of us doing our first competitions were probably running a little bit hot with caffeine, but regardless, you're probably looking for a guide on when should I take caffeine and how much should I take, especially relative to my normal dosage. Well, the first thing that I would recommend is to actually break up your caffeine supplementation and not just take one big dosage before the meet starts in the same way that you would on a training day. Now, why is this? Well, most competitions are probably going to run upwards of 3 hours, which for most of you is probably longer than any of the days that you're in the gym. And if you are in the gym that long, you're probably doing some of your accessory movements by that point and not a max attempt deadlift. So what I would recommend, if you're tired when weigh-ins are starting, you can maybe do a quarter dosage as you're rehydrating just to get things going. But when you are starting your warm-ups for each lift, I would take the dosage of caffeine that you're comfortable taking in that moment. Now, you don't need your full dosage. So if you're a double scooper before your workout starts, you could probably go with 1 scoop before squats and you'll be carried by the meet day adrenaline along with that. Now, if you feel yourself starting to peter out before bench, maybe early on in those warm-ups you take half a scoop. And then you start to peter off before deadlift, maybe you take another half scoop. But what happens so often is lifters will take the massive dosage beforehand And then by the time they get to deadlift, they've already started to experience that caffeine crash. And once we start to experience that, we can't really pull ourselves out of it with another dosage. It's kind of like when you were playing Little League as a kid and your coach said, if you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So getting ahead of that and just keeping a regular caffeine drip throughout the day without getting overly aggressive, of course, is going to be your best bet for being well energized throughout the course of the competition. And then the final piece of advice that I would give is just be familiar with the rule book. Now, this is something I don't need to keep spoon feeding to you guys. You can go read the rule book for your respective federation, but also be aware of where the judges table is, how attempts are to be put in, because the last thing that you want to happen is to smoke your second attempt squat, have the opportunity to load up an all-time PR, and you've timed out. And now you can only load 2.5 kilos more. Make sure you know where the table is, if there are pieces of paper that you write your next attempt, or if you're just telling the person sitting at the table. And then finally, know the rules for white lights versus red lights, the different types of cards that can be thrown up, because you don't want to miss an attempt and think that you absolutely dunked it, and then you get a red light for soft knees, and now you're arguing with the ref because you think that they called you on depth, right? Don't be that embarrassing lifter on meet day. Handle yourself with grace, with sportsmanship. Thank the spotters and loaders. Thank the referees for the work that they've done. And you will be well cemented in your powerlifting community and well received in your next competition. So that's all I've got for you guys today. If this was helpful, let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if there are any topics you want me to do a deep dive on from this video, because like I said in the last video, I want this channel to be quick hits that give you guys practical, accessible information to make you a better lifter and competitor. As always, my name is Sean Noriega. I appreciate you watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.